A female mechanic from a quiet small town just repaired a homeless veteran's broken-down truck using nothing but determination, compassion, and a simple set of tools. But what happened next? The veteran, who had been overlooked and forgotten, returned days later. Not with a thank you card, but with a Navy helicopter and a mission that would change her life. This heartwarming story of how a female mechanic's act of kindness sparked a nationwide veteran support movement will stay with you long after it ends. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. The sun had just dipped below the hills of Maplewood, a sleepy town where everyone knew each other's stories, or at least, they thought they did. Inside a modest auto repair garage on the edge of town, Ava Mitchell wiped the grease from her hands and leaned back against the workbench. Business had been slow lately. Folks preferred shiny dealerships over her old family-run shop. But Ava stayed because this place wasn't just a garage, it was her father's legacy. As the chill of the evening crept in, Ava glanced at the clock. 1 more hour till closing. She grabbed her toolbox, ready to lock up, when she heard the unmistakable sputter of an engine in distress. Moments later, an old, battered pickup truck limped into the lot, its hood barely hanging on. Behind the wheel was a man who looked as worn as the vehicle itself. His jacket was frayed, his boots caked with dirt, and his face told stories of battles long past. He sat there for a moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel, as if debating whether to stay or leave. But something about him struck Ava a quiet heaviness in his eyes. She set down her tools and walked toward him. "Evenin', sir," Ava called gently, approaching the truck with a welcoming smile. The man startled slightly, his grip loosening on the wheel, up close. Ava noticed the deep lines on his face, a roadmap of hardship. His name wasn't written anywhere, but she could read the weariness in his posture. "Looks like she's seen better days," Ava said, tapping the truck's hood affectionately. The man chuckled. But it was hollow, like he'd forgotten how. "She's got one last ride in her." "I reckon," he muttered, his voice raspy, as though it hadn't been used much in days. "Name's Ava. You need a hand?" The man hesitated, pride clashing with necessity. "I'm Samuel." "Don't want to trouble you, ma'am. Just needed to get her a little further down the road." Ava could tell from the grinding sounds the truck had made that it wasn't going any further tonight. She crouched by the front wheel, pretending to inspect it more than necessary, giving him time to process the offer. "Tell you what, Samuel, you let me take a look. No charge. Won't sit right with me, knowing you're out there in this cold night." He finally nodded, reluctantly, stepping out of the cab. As he stood, Ava noticed a slight limp and how his jacket barely kept out the wind. This wasn't just a man with car trouble. This was someone life had left behind, under the harsh fluorescent lights of the garage. Ava popped the hood. The engine was a mess, belts frayed, fluid leaking, parts held together with makeshift fixes. She whistled low. "Samuel, this isn't a patch job. She needs real work. But I can fix her up. Good as new." Samuel shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "I don't have the kind of money that'd be worth your time." "Miss Ava." "I didn't ask you about money," Ava replied, standing up straight. "Some debts aren't paid in cash." He looked at her, confused. "You served, didn't you?" she asked softly. Samuel's eyes flickered with surprise, then quickly dropped. "Long time ago. Doesn't matter much now." "It matters to me," Ava said firmly. "My dad was in the Navy, taught me this trade when he got back. Said it saved him having something to fix with his hands. So, Consider this my way of paying it forward." Samuel's lips tightened, his eyes glistening for a fraction of a second before he blinked it away. He didn't argue again. He simply gave her a nod of quiet acceptance. The next few hours passed with the rhythmic clink of tools and Ava's occasional muttered curse at stubborn bolts. Samuel tried to help, but she shooed him off, making him sit on an old stool with a cup of instant coffee. They didn't talk much. But in the silence, a certain bond settled two people who understood the language of unspoken stories. By midnight, the truck's engine hummed back to life, smoother than it had in years. Samuel stood up, staring at the revived machine like he couldn't believe it. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "She's reliable," Ava corrected with a grin. "Just like you folks who wear that uniform." Samuel opened his mouth as if to respond, but words failed him. Instead, he reached into his jacket, pulling out a small, worn patch, an emblem of his old unit, and placed it gently on the workbench. "I don't have much to give, Ava, but this means a lot to me. Maybe your shop can keep it safe now." Ava's chest tightened. She accepted the patch like it was made of gold. "I'll hang it right by my dad's." As Samuel climbed back into his truck, Ava had a strange feeling, like this wasn't the last chapter of their meeting. He rolled down the window and looked at her, this time with a warmth in his expression that hadn't been there before. "Thank you, Ava. Folks don't do things like this anymore." "They should," she said, echoing words she'd heard from her father 1,000 times. With a rumble, Samuel's truck rolled out of the garage into the cold night. Ava watched it disappear down the road, unaware that this simple act of kindness was about to circle back to her in a way she could never have imagined. 2 days had passed since Ava repaired Samuel's truck, but his visit lingered in her mind. There was something about him, the way he carried the weight of the world, but refused to complain, that left an imprint on her heart. The garage had been quiet since then, just the familiar hum of the heater and the occasional creak of old wood settling. Ava chalked it up to a random good deed. She never expected to see him again. That all changed on a crisp Thursday morning. The sun had barely risen when Ava's phone started buzzing relentlessly. Texts poured in from friends, neighbors, even customers she hadn't seen in months. "Ava, you better get outside right now." "Is it true?" "Did you call the Navy? There's a helicopter at your shop." Confused and half-dressed, Ava stumbled into her boots and swung open the garage's front door. The scene before her was something out of a movie. Hovering just a few feet above her lot was a Navy helicopter, its blades chopping the morning air with a deafening roar. Dust and loose papers from her workbench flew everywhere as the powerful gusts battered the small shop. Parked along the street were black SUVs with government plates, and a gathering crowd of onlookers stood behind hastily set up barricades. Their phones held high, recording every moment. Ava's heart pounded as the helicopter slowly descended, its landing skids touching down with a controlled grace right in the middle of her parking lot. Before she could even process the absurdity of what she was seeing, the side door of the chopper slid open. Out stepped Samuel, but he was different. Gone were the tattered jacket and worn boots. He now wore a sharply pressed Navy uniform, his chest adorned with ribbons and medals that gleamed under the morning sun. His posture was straighter, his eyes no longer clouded with weariness, but steady, focused. Following him was a group of high-ranking naval officers, their presence commanding respect. Ava stood frozen, a wrench still in her hand, as Samuel made his way toward her. "Ava Mitchell." His voice boomed over the helicopter's fading engine, but there was no hint of the humble drifter she had met days before. "Do you always fix up broken veterans without asking who they are?" Ava blinked, completely at a loss. I fix trucks. Samuel, not people." A grin cracked across his face. "Well, you did both." The naval officers formed a semicircle behind him as Samuel came to a stop in front of her. The cameras kept flashing. The townsfolk murmured in disbelief. "I should properly introduce myself," Samuel said, his tone softer now. "Commander Samuel Hayes, United States Navy Special Warfare Division." Ava's breath caught. Her gaze darted to the others. She recognized some of them from news clips, high-ranking figures in military leadership. This wasn't a prank. This was real. "I was returning from a classified assignment," Samuel continued, "testing whether the world I fought for still had kindness left in it. That night, I wasn't just stranded with a broken truck, I was a man feeling forgotten by his own country. But you saw me. Not as a uniform, not as a burden, but as a person." A lump formed in Ava's throat. Samuel turned slightly, signaling one of the officers, who stepped forward carrying a velvet-lined box. Inside was a plaque, its golden lettering catching the light. "For service to those who serve." Samuel read aloud, presenting the plaque to Ava. "This is a token from the U.S. Navy in recognition of your selfless act of kindness." Ava's hands trembled as she accepted it. But Samuel wasn't done. "Commander Mitchell," he said, the corner of his lips curling into a mischievous smile. Ava's brow furrowed. "Commander. Honorary commander?" "Of course," Samuel clarified, his eyes twinkling. "Effective immediately, because we believe kindness is a rank that should be worn proudly." The crowd behind them erupted into applause. Before Ava could respond, another officer approached, handing Samuel a folder. He flipped it open, pulled out a document, and passed it to her. "This is a grant for $100,000, Ava, to upgrade your garage, to turn it into a veteran support auto center, a place where any veteran can get their vehicle fixed free of charge." Tears welled in Ava's eyes as the weight of the moment crashed over her. The woman who had spent nights worrying about keeping the lights on was now being asked to be part of something bigger than herself. This is too much," she whispered, shaking her head. Samuel stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "No, Ava, this is what happens when the right person does the right thing, expecting nothing in return. You gave me hope that night. Today, we're giving it back." As the helicopter's engine roared back to life in preparation for departure, Samuel placed a hand on her shoulder and leaned in. "You fixed a truck, Ava, but you also repaired a man's faith in humanity. Never underestimate how far that kindness can travel." The rest of that day felt like a dream. Ava couldn't quite wake up from. Her small-town garage, a place where she'd spent most nights worrying about bills and rusted exhausts, had suddenly turned into a buzzing epicenter of attention. Reporters camped outside. Neighbors who hadn't visited in years showed up offering congratulations and home-baked pies. And yet, amidst all the noise, Ava's mind kept circling back to one thing Samuel had said. "You fixed a truck, Ava, but you also repaired a man's faith in humanity." It haunted her in the best possible way. That evening, when the cameras had finally gone and the sun dipped behind the ridgeline, Ava sat on the hood of an old Chevy, staring at the worn patch Samuel had given her days before. It was still there, sitting on her workbench, now accompanied by the Navy plaque and the folder containing the $100,000 grant. But those weren't the things that stirred her heart. What rattled her most was the realization that she had spent so long underestimating the impact of simple kindness. Fixing cars had always been about survival for her paying bills, keeping the shop afloat. She never imagined it could ripple out and touch lives beyond a fleeting transaction. The next morning, before she even had time to sip her coffee, a soft knock echoed at the garage door. She slid it open to find an elderly man standing there, holding his hat nervously in his hands. "Miss Mitchell," he asked, his voice tentative. "That's me," Ava replied, wiping her hands on a rag. "I heard about what happened." He said, I don't have much. But my son, he's a veteran. He's been out of work. His car's been dead for months. I didn't know where else to turn." Ava's throat tightened. This was it. This was the beginning of something. "Bring it in," she said, smiling gently. "Let's see what we can do." The man's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as he nodded, thanking her over and over as he shuffled away. Moments later, a rusted old sedan rolled into the lot, backfiring as it came to a stop. Ava got to work, not because there was a grant or cameras, but because it was the right thing to do. And that's how it began. Word spread like wildfire. Within days, veterans and their families started arriving, some with broken-down cars, others just needing someone to listen. The garage transformed into a haven, a place where no one was turned away, no matter how small or big their problem was. Ava found herself learning stories she never expected to hear. There was Leo, a young Marine who'd returned home to find his house foreclosed and was living out of his truck. There was Eleanor, a Navy widow whose car had sat idle for years because no mechanic would take on an old clunker. And then there was Owen, a retired Army medic battling PTSD, who offered to volunteer at the garage just so he could feel useful again. Each of them came with their own burdens. And every time Ava picked up a wrench or offered a cup of coffee, she realized the repairs weren't just mechanical, they were emotional. It wasn't about fixing metal, it was about mending pride, restoring dignity, and reminding people they still mattered. What once was a one-woman operation quickly grew. Samuel visited again, this time with a team of Navy engineers who volunteered their weekends to help. Donations poured in tools, parts, even a portable lift system donated by a retired veteran who had seen Ava's story on the news. But through it all, Ava stayed grounded. She still answered the phone with the same casual Mitchell's garage. What's broken now, and she still kept her father's old photograph above the register, right next to Samuel's patch. Late one evening, after a long day of repairs and impromptu counseling sessions, Ava sat alone on the shop floor, sipping cold coffee and staring up at the faded rafters. She thought about how easy it had been, before all this, to fall into the rhythm of thinking that small acts don't make a difference, that kindness gets lost in a world too busy to notice. But now she knew better. Samuel's words had changed her perspective. This wasn't just a garage anymore. It was a sanctuary. Ava understood something deeply now. You never know when a simple gesture, a repaired truck, a hot meal, a listening ear might be the spark that reignites someone's hope. And once you light that fire, it spreads faster than you ever imagined. It was a rainy Thursday when Ava's life took another unexpected turn. The garage was filled with the soft patter of raindrops drumming on the metal roof, blending with the rhythmic clinks of tools and murmured conversations. Owen, the retired Army medic, was under a car, humming an old tune while Eleanor sorted through donated spare parts with a precision only a Navy widow could master. Ava had just finished replacing a cracked radiator when her phone buzzed on the workbench. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something nudged her to pick up. "Mitchell's garage. What's broken now?" she answered in her usual light-hearted tone. The voice on the other end wasn't what she expected. It was calm, authoritative, yet warm. "Ms. Ava Mitchell. This is Rear Admiral Victoria Lane, U.S., Navy. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance, Commander Samuel Hayes." Ava straightened, wiping her hands on her coveralls. "Yes, ma'am. Commander Hayes is... well, he's the reason half my town knows my name now. A soft chuckle echoed through the phone. "He speaks very highly of you. That's why I'm calling." Ava's heart began to race. "Ms. Mitchell, we've been working on a program to establish veteran support mobility units, specialized mobile repair and assistance teams that can respond to veterans in rural and underserved communities. The Navy believes your garage and the movement you've started is the perfect pilot model." Ava's mind spun. "Wait, you want me to—" "What exactly?" Admiral Lane continued. "We want to partner with you, provide you with additional resources, more mobile units like the food truck Samuel presented you, but not just for food, for on-the-go vehicle repairs, emergency assistance, and veteran outreach. We'll help you assemble a team, train volunteers, and launch the first Navy-endorsed civilian veteran support fleet." Ava's jaw dropped. She had gone from fixing a stranger's old pickup to being offered the chance to lead a nationwide support initiative. It didn't feel real. "Admiral, I'm just a mechanic from Maplewood. I don't know the first thing about running a fleet." "That's exactly why you're the right person for this," Admiral Lane said, her tone firm yet encouraging. "You're real. You understand what service looks like outside of a uniform, and veterans trust that." Ava's chest tightened with a mixture of fear and awe. She wasn't sure she was ready. She wasn't sure she ever would be. But maybe readiness wasn't what mattered. Maybe what mattered was the willingness to try. "All right, Admiral," Ava said, exhaling slowly. "Where do we start?" 2 weeks later, Mitchell's garage was transformed. Gone were the quiet, lonely days of tinkering under hoods in solitude. Now, the lot was filled with Navy personnel and civilian volunteers working side by side, prepping the first official veteran support mobile units. Ava watched as Owen trained younger volunteers on basic field repairs. Eleanor, clipboard in hand, coordinated incoming donation shipments with military efficiency. In the center of it all stood Ava, clipboard in one hand, wrench in the other, a symbol of what happens when a community comes together, not for fame, but for purpose. One afternoon, while fitting new tires onto one of the mobile units, Samuel returned. This time, he didn't arrive in a helicopter, but in the same pickup truck Ava had repaired weeks before, except now. It gleamed like new. "You didn't think I'd let you start a fleet without me, did you?" he teased, tossing her a navy blue cap embroidered with the words Veteran Support Fleet. Founding crew. Ava caught it, a grin spreading across her face. "Figured you'd show up eventually. Didn't think you'd bring merch." Samuel chuckled, but then his tone softened. "You've built something incredible here. Ava, you've turned a one-time act of kindness into a mission that'll change lives across the country." Ava looked around at the volunteers, the vehicles, the people who had once walked through her doors with more burdens than hope, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel the weight of what they had built together. It wasn't about the Navy endorsement, or the media attention, or even the grant money. It was about people seeing each other again. It was about making sure no veteran felt like they had to navigate life's breakdowns alone. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Ava stood by Samuel, watching the first of the fully equipped support vehicles roll out of the lot. The logo on the side read, "Mitchell's Fleet, serving those who served us." Ava exhaled, feeling the enormity of the moment settle into her bones. She had started with a wrench and a stubborn heart. Now, she had an opportunity to rewrite the story of how veterans are treated, one repaired vehicle and one repaired life at a time. The weeks turned into months, and Ava Mitchell's garage was no longer just a repair shop. It had become a lifeline. What began as a quiet gesture of kindness had ignited a movement far beyond the small town of Maplewood. Yet, in the middle of the storm of media headlines, military partnerships, and a growing fleet of veteran support units, Ava found herself facing a transformation that had nothing to do with fame or accolades. It was within her. Before Samuel Hayes' truck rolled into her lot, Ava had lived life on autopilot, fix the car, pay the bills, survive the next month. She never sought recognition. In fact, she shied away from it. But now, every knock on her garage door wasn't just another customer. It was a reminder that people needed her not just for mechanical fixes, but for hope. One rainy afternoon, as she tightened the bolts on a support van, a young woman named Grace approached her. Grace had served in the Air Force but was now struggling to adjust to civilian life. She barely met Ava's eyes when she spoke. "I used to fix planes," Grace murmured, shoving her hands into the pockets of a jacket 2 sizes too big. "Now, I can't even land a job changing oil." Ava saw herself in Grace, that self-doubt, that weight of wondering if she was enough. "Come with me," Ava said, tossing her a pair of gloves. "You've got more skills in those hands than you give yourself credit for." Together, they worked on an old veteran's van, Ava guiding her but letting Grace's hands do the work. With every bolt tightened and wire secured, Grace's posture straightened, her voice grew firmer, her smile returned. That was the real heart of Ava's mission, rebuilding people, not just machines. It wasn't long before Ava noticed the same transformation happening within herself. She no longer felt like an imposter amidst military officers or corporate donors. When she spoke, people listened. When she led, others followed. But more importantly, she learned to accept help, something she had once resisted with a fierce independence. Owen became her right-hand man, managing the day-to-day operations of the support fleet. Eleanor, with her sharp wit and sharper organizational skills, took charge of logistics and outreach programs. Grace eventually became a lead technician, teaching other young veterans the art of automotive repair while sharing her story of rediscovering purpose. Ava wasn't just building a team. She was nurturing a family bound not by blood, but by shared scars and a collective will to serve. One evening, as the team gathered for their usual late-night debrief around a makeshift table of toolboxes and spare tires, Samuel stood up, holding a worn photo. It was of his old unit, a group of soldiers smiling beneath the weight of their gear. "We fought to protect our country," Samuel said, his gaze sweeping across the team. "But what you're doing here, Ava, is fighting for the hearts of those who come home and feel invisible." The garage fell silent, the weight of his words settling deep. Ava looked around at the people who had once walked through her doors, lost, now standing tall, equipped with purpose. And it hit her she was no longer the small-town mechanic trying to keep her father's legacy alive. She was forging her own. But growth wasn't without its battles. There were days when exhaustion threatened to pull her under, when the bureaucratic red tape of expanding the program felt suffocating. Nights when the stories of veterans, raw and painful, kept her awake, their traumas clinging to her heart. But every time doubt whispered in her ear. Ava remembered that truck on that cold night, how a simple choice to help had set all of this in motion. One act of kindness had evolved into a movement. But Ava's most profound growth wasn't in leading a fleet or managing a national program. It was in realizing that her value was never tied to how much she could fix, but how much she could care. Her garage walls now bore more than tools and car parts. They displayed photographs of veterans she'd helped, thank you notes scribbled on napkins, patches from military units across the country. Each item was a testament to the fact that kindness, real, quiet, unassuming kindness, was louder than any accolade. And in that realization, Ava Mitchell found her true strength. She wasn't a hero because of the Navy's attention, or the grants, or the news headlines. She was a hero because when life offered her a choice to turn away, she chose to lean in, wrench in hand, heart wide open. The day had finally come. Months of late nights, oil-streaked hands, and quiet moments of doubt had led to this, the official launch of Mitchell's veteran support fleet. The once quiet garage was now a hub of activity, with a convoy of freshly painted mobile units lined up, their exteriors gleaming under the morning sun. Each bore the emblem Ava had designed herself, a simple wrench crossed over an American flag, with the words, "Serving those who served us," etched beneath. Ava stood at the heart of it all, wearing her worn coveralls and the navy blue cap Samuel had given her. She didn't care about cameras or speeches. All she cared about was that the people who had once felt forgotten, the veterans who had sacrificed everything, were being seen today. The mayor of Maplewood was there. So were military officials, local news stations, and community members who had watched Ava's journey unfold from the very beginning. But none of them mattered as much as the veterans standing proudly beside her, their eyes gleaming with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief that this was really happening. Samuel Hayes approached her, a knowing smile on his face. "Nervous?" he asked, though they both knew the answer. "I'm terrified," Ava admitted, exhaling a shaky breath. "But not for me, for the ones we still haven't reached yet." Samuel's hand landed gently on her shoulder. "That's exactly why you're the right person to lead this." As the ceremony began, Ava was called to the small platform set up amidst the convoy. She looked out over the crowd, hundreds of faces, all gathered because of a single moment that had started with a broken-down truck and a simple choice to care. She took a deep breath. "I'm not great at speeches," she began, earning a few soft chuckles from the crowd. "But I know a thing or two about fixing what's broken." Her voice was steady, but her heart raced as she continued. "A few months ago, a man's truck rolled into my garage. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his rank. All I knew was that he needed help. And so, I did what my father always taught me. I picked up my wrench and got to work." She paused, her throat tightening. What I didn't realize then was that the truck wasn't the only thing broken. It was trust. It was dignity. It was a belief that people still saw our veterans as more than a passing headline. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. But kindness has a way of fixing things no wrench ever could. It doesn't care about uniforms or ranks. It doesn't ask for anything in return. It just shows up quietly, persistently, until the broken parts don't feel so broken anymore. Ava's eyes swept over the mobile units lined up behind her. "This fleet isn't about me. It's about every man and woman who's ever come home and felt invisible. It's about giving back to those who gave everything. And it's a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures, a repaired truck, a warm meal, a listening ear can ripple out and change lives in ways we'll never fully understand." Her voice wavered, but she didn't fight it. This moment deserved every ounce of real, unfiltered emotion. "We're not fixing cars today. We're restoring hope. 1 mile at a time, one veteran at a time." As she stepped down, the crowd erupted into applause. But Ava didn't bask in it. Instead, she joined her team. Owen, Eleanor, Grace, Samuel, as they prepared to send off the first wave of support units. With a simple nod from Ava, the engines roared to life. The convoy rolled forward, each vehicle a testament to what could happen when one person chose kindness over indifference. As the last truck pulled away, Ava looked up at the sky, imagining her father watching with that same proud smile he'd given her after every tough repair job. She didn't see herself as a hero. Heroes wore medals and marched in parades. She was just Ava Mitchell, a mechanic with a stubborn heart, a garage full of memories, and now a purpose that stretched far beyond Maplewood's dusty roads. But maybe just maybe, that was what a real hero looked like. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson, Ava stood tall amidst the fading echoes of applause. The world hadn't changed overnight, but today, in her little corner of it, she had made a difference. And she knew this was only the beginning. Because kindness wasn't a moment. Kindness was a movement. Anyone can build something that matters if they're willing to pick up the first wrench and believe that small hands can create big change. As the sun set behind the hills of Maplewood, Ava Mitchell closed the garage for the night, not to rest, but to draft blueprints for a program that would teach veterans and struggling youth the skills she once thought were just a trade. The mechanic who once questioned if kindness mattered had built a movement that would keep rolling long after the cameras were gone. Because for Ava, and for everyone who dared to believe a single act of kindness was never the finish line, it was only the ignition. The end. Up next, 2 more stories that will prove kindness isn't small. Click to keep this movement alive and hit subscribe if you believe small towns can change the world.